Right, good evening, everyone. It's me, Nketia, Professor NK, or just NK for short, and welcome back to another Study Squad session. Now, this Study Squad session in particular is going to be really exciting. It's going to be focused all about university applications. We're going to get started really soon, so don't worry at all. I can see we have a few people drifting in. Don't be afraid to say hi. Also, let me know if the music in the background is too loud. If it is, I will happily turn it down. But I'm definitely excited for today's Study Squad session because it's going to be all about university applications. Because I know for a lot of you, you'll be gearing up towards university applications and getting your UCAS applications done and also getting your personal statements done. So the next couple of sessions are going to be focused all about the university application process and how, and a few tips and tricks that you can use to make that process as smooth as possible. Hi Rhea, thank you for joining us this evening. You've asked what the topic for today's lesson is. The topic for today's lesson, as I was just saying, it's all about UCAS. So it doesn't matter whether you're in year 10, 11, 12 or 13. These next couple of sessions will really be geared towards the university admissions process. I will also talk a little bit about my university application experience, talk a little bit about how I wrote my personal statement, talk a little bit about what sort of things you should look out for when it comes to applying. And towards the end, we'll have a bit of a Q&A all about university. So today's session and next week's session is all geared towards uni applications. I know it's 5 o'clock, but as we always do, we'll just start off with a nice sort of chilled hi, hello, how are you, just to sort of get things started. And then we'll get started in the next 10 minutes or so. So no rush whatsoever. How is everyone? Hope everyone's doing well. I can see a few more viewers drifting in. Don't be afraid to say hi. We're all about engagement here, so it'll be great to see and hear from all of you. It's going to be a really interactive session where you'll get the opportunity to ask loads of questions. So don't be afraid to say hi. I can see that Samuel, hi. You said hi. Hope you're well. Hope the day's been productive. Hope it's been good. Thank you for joining this evening as our absolutely brilliant moderator. Just as we're getting into the swing of things, just a couple of things as per usual. Again, do make sure you check out the other Study Squad sessions that happen earlier on in the week. So Olivia has really brilliant math sessions on a Monday at 5 p.m. Bliss has coding sessions on a Tuesday at 5 p.m. And as always, you have me on a Thursday at 5 p.m. all about study skills. Hi May, thank you for joining this evening. Hope you're well. Hope your day's been good. Hope it's been productive. I hope you're excited to tune into a couple of sessions all about university admissions. And if you do have any questions about what course to pick, how to write a personal statement, deadlines in terms of when do I get my personal statement done by, picking universities, we're going to cover all of it over the next 2 sessions, so do make sure that you tune in. It's going to be really exciting. Also, do let me know if the music is too loud. If it is, I'll turn it down. I don't think it is, and hopefully all of you can hear me over the music. I just don't want to be drowned out or anything like that. But yeah, we'll give it 4 or 5 more minutes, and then we'll just get straight into it. So Samuel, you said that you can't hear the music at all on your end. Okay, maybe I'll turn it up a bit. Let's see. We'll move the mini speaker a bit closer. There we go. Hopefully that's a little bit better. It's just for ambiance, really. I don't really want it to overpower my voice. But I suppose it is about finding a bit of a balance between the two. So, just to sort of get started, does anyone have any questions at all about applying to university? Does anyone have any experience when it comes to applying? Who amongst the viewers now are thinking about university? Who amongst you are already writing personal statements? What courses do you have in mind? It'll be really, really interesting to see, what all of you have in mind so far. Or if you're already an undergraduate or even a postgraduate, it'll be really interesting to see what course you either did before as an undergrad or you're doing now either as an undergrad or a postgrad. So by all means, do pop some comments in the chat. We're all about engagement, so do get involved. We'll give it another 2 minutes or so, and then after that, I think we'll get straight into the lesson for today, or I guess the content for today's study squad. Definitely excited to go over this content. It's interesting because when I was putting together these sessions with my tutor team, it was a bit of an opportunity to go down memory lane, to be honest. It feels so long ago that it was me applying for university, but in that same breath, it also feels quite recent. It's quite interesting how time works that way, to be honest. But there you go. Very, very interesting stuff. I'm sure for some of you, the idea of applying to university is a bit daunting, whether you're gearing up to that, whether you're in the midst of that process, or you're even just having a few casual thoughts as to what you might want to do in the future. But hopefully by the end of this session and next week's session, you'll have a lot more clarity as to how the application process works. You'll have a bit more clarity as to maybe what you even might want to do at university as a course, or you may even have more clarity as to whether or not university is for you. I think one of the most important things is to remember that there are many different routes in terms of what you can do after school. University, whilst perhaps one of the more traditional routes, certainly isn't the only route that people can take. And actually, one thing we are going to talk about are some of the myths around applying to university and really debunking some of those. So that's just something to keep in mind. But okay, I think it's 5:10. I say we just get right into it. So, as per usual, if anyone does drift in later on in the session, then absolutely fine. I will say hi, welcome you into the chat. For those of you who have already joined us this evening, once again, my name is NK. And today we're going to be going over the UCAS application process and the whole university experience. So I'm going to switch over to the PowerPoint, which should be loading in 3, 2, 1. There we go. Excellent. Perfect timing on my part. So, I'm going to turn down the music a little bit. There we go. So, applying for university and UCAS. So, I think it would be really appropriate if we just have a bit of a show of hands. Just pop in the chat right now whether you want to go to university. If you do, why do you want to go to university? I think one thing that is always interesting is that when it comes to applying for that next step in education, a lot of people say, well, I'm applying for university because naturally it's the next thing. But I think what's important to remember is that university is an option, in the same way that perhaps going straight into the workplace is also an option. In the same way that maybe even creating your own business nowadays is also an option. There are a variety of routes that you can take, but I think what's really important is that you have a good enough idea as to what your motivation is. So, just pop in the chat. Why do you want to go to university? Or, if you're already past that university stage, why did you want to go to university? Just to be as inclusive as possible with those questions. So, it could very well be that you want to do a particular course, and that course requires you to do a degree. It could very well be that you want to do university for the social aspect of it. There's a variety of reasons. So Akil, hi, thank you for joining this evening. Great to see you. Akil said that he believes that university is one way to collect specific knowledge about what you want to sort of become an expert in. I think that's brilliant. Cool. Olivia, hi, thanks for joining us this evening. You said it's because you like to learn. I think that's a brilliant motivation to go to university. You certainly do a lot of learning, and the great thing is it's all self-directed. So, fantastic. Good on you. May, you said that you want to go to university to do a course and to meet new people. Both are things which you can do very, very easily at university. There's ample opportunity to do that, so I think that's absolutely brilliant. I wanted to go to university because I wanted to go into healthcare, and at the time, a lot of the roles in healthcare, I'm a pharmacist now, required a degree. So that was my reason for wanting to go to university. But also because I wanted to learn. I wanted to learn more about the world around me, and I also wanted to try living independently. That was another reason. Anyone else? Why else do you want to go to university? What might be some other reasons as to why people want to go to university? It'd be really interesting to see some of the submissions in the live chat. So Akil has said get involved in societies. Yeah, I think that's brilliant. So when I was at university, I was part of a couple. In first and second year, I was part of an a cappella group because I quite like musical theatre and singing. That was when I could sing at the time. I don't think I really can now. I was briefly part of a Pokemon society. I also got involved in a debating society, which was also really, really cool, and a volunteering society. And it's actually through that volunteering society that I then found out about my tutor. And here I am now, my tutor on the platform, and a tutor who has been honoured to conduct this study squad over the past few weeks. So you never really know how far societies can take you in terms of opportunities. So yes, Akil, thank you for that. I definitely agree. Getting involved in societies is another reason why someone might want to go to university. So, I think that's a good few examples. I suppose one of the things that I want to try and spend some time on is addressing some of the misconceptions that come with university. So, one of them that I'm sure many of you have heard, and by all means, this is not an exhaustive list. If anyone has any others that they've heard, do put them in the chat because it'll be really interesting to see what some of those things are that you've heard of. So, I've heard that in order to get a good job, you have to go to university. Now, on the next slide, we will talk a bit about why that isn't the case, and why that's actually quite an outdated way of thinking. There are many ways in which to achieve good employment, and I suppose that's relative, without necessarily going to university. So just keep that in mind. Another myth is that you can't be a doctor, a nurse, a pharmacist, a dentist, or anything like that without going to university. Now, I'm actually going to talk a little bit about that on the next slide, and there will be a Q&A towards the end, so if anyone is interested in courses like that, then I'd be more than happy to answer any questions and to have a bit of a conversation. You need high grades to get into university at all. Again, that is something else that I've heard, another quite common misconception. And another one is if you don't have the right A levels, you can't do the course that you'd like at university. Now, I just want a quick show of hands. Just put a thumbs up. Actually, no, do a thumbs down. Thumbs down in the chat whether, just to confirm that everyone is in agreement that all of those are incorrect. That all of those statements that I've just listed off on the screen are all either outdated, they're inaccurate, or they're just fundamentally false. So, just a quick thumbs down in the chat, just to say that we're all in agreement that all of these myths are just myths, and actually they don't carry much weight in the real world. So I can see that Olivia has put a thumbs down. Fantastic. Great to see that you're on board, that all of these are myths and that they are not the case. We're actually going to go into debunking all of these myths on the next slide. So it's good to see that you're on board there. I can also see a couple of other thumbs down. Brilliant. That's great. Anyone else at all? Who else is in agreement that all of these are myths and fundamentally do not matter in the real world? We'll give it a couple of extra minutes before we actually move on to debunking some of these myths around university and around education. You know, interestingly enough, I think a lot of people tend to sort of buy into the first one, that you have to go to university to get a good job. Again, I think the term good job in itself is quite, it's subjective. So May, you've said that you think the last one about A-levels is sort of correct. Because, say, if you don't do well in biology A-level, you wouldn't or are less likely to get a medical course. Okay, so I'm going to talk about that one. Because there is truth in what you're saying, but on the other hand, there are alternative routes into, let's say, medical school, for instance. It just requires a little bit of research, and we're actually going to talk about that really, really shortly. Akil, you've also said a thumbs down, fab. Let's not waste any time. Let's go straight into debunking some of these myths. So, the first thing, you do not need to go to university to get a good job, because that's not the case at all. There are many avenues beyond school that don't require university. Okay? So, for instance, some people go straight into the workplace, and depending on what sector you go into, there can be very, very quick progression. Now, a good job, I suppose, is dependent on what you define as good. What metric is good? Is it pay? I don't really think so. From my perspective, I think what's quite important is when it comes to employment, you pursue a career that you're happy with and that makes you happy. Yes, I can appreciate that having a good salary is also important, but it's just as important that you're in a role that you actively enjoy. Otherwise, you may get to the point where you wonder, well, why am I doing this? Akil, you said that it depends on the university that you apply for. So I suppose this pertains to what May said earlier, and it also pertains to the first point about you need to go to university to get a good job. I suppose, again, that depends. All universities have their own strengths and weaknesses, and all of them are known for particular things. I suppose this is why doing reading around different universities that you might be interested in is important, because it means that you can then choose specific institutions that will support you in particular areas that you find of interest and that you might be interested in carrying on to a career level. So that's something I would say there. The second point is that you can't be a doctor, a nurse, or a pharmacist, or let's say a dentist without going to university. This is also incorrect, and this is something that's become more and more evident in more recent years. Medical school, nursing school, schools of pharmacy, Dentistry, potentially, that I'm not entirely 100% on, but definitely the first three. Many universities, and not all of them, all have the options for apprenticeships nowadays. So you can enroll onto a course where you're studying and also working at the same time. It may be shadowing, depending on the nature of the course in question. Again, university isn't always for everyone, depending on circumstances. University might not be an option. But just keep in mind that if you do have the aspiration to go into the medical field, there are other avenues that don't require university. They may just require a bit more looking into. The same thing also applies for other careers. So I'm sure law also has apprenticeships, for instance. Again, what I would encourage all of you to do is, if you really have an interest in a particular career path and you don't think university is for you, look at other avenues, because there are always other routes to get to where you want to get to. The third myth is that you need high grades to get into university at all. Now, the reason that this is a myth is because the phrase "at all" suggests that university is just for high achievers in terms of grades. And what I'll say, even in using that phrase, it's not the case at all. It is not the case that you need to get 3 A's or 3 A stars at A level to get to university, and anything less then means you can't. All universities will have specific grade requirements, and these can be found on the admissions page for each course of the university itself, or you can find them on the UCAS page when you're actually searching. Now, it will depend on the university, so universities like Oxford and Cambridge may very well have higher grades than other institutions. But that's actually why, when it comes to actually applying, one of the things that I will advise is that you pick different universities with a range of grades, which then gives you a bit of leeway in terms of the grades that you achieve at A level. What I would recommend is that you look at individual course requirements, because they also vary between schools. The same course at one university may have different grade requirements compared to that of another university. Additionally, some universities work on something called a UCAS points. So your grades equate to a certain number of points, and there are a minimum number of points required to apply. So that's something else just to sort of keep an eye out for. And finally, if you don't have the right A levels, you can't do the course you'd like to do. This is also incorrect. A lot of universities will have what's known as a foundation year. So you may have the course itself, which is, let's say, so I'm going to take pharmacy as an example. Pharmacy is generally a 4-year degree. It's an integrated master's. But if you didn't do things like biology or maths, or maybe the A levels which are deemed traditional and following that undergraduate course, a lot of universities offer the same degree but with a foundation year. So the course will be an extra year or an extra 2 years, depending on the institution. And what you would then do in that foundation year is you would learn effectively the knowledge that you would have learned at A level to bring you up to speed. So again, even more reason to remember that even if you didn't necessarily pick the A levels that a particular course would ask for, all it requires of you is to do a little bit of reading, a bit of research to see what your options are. Now, I hope that's made sense for everyone. Does anyone have any questions so far? Does anyone have any experience when it comes to actually applying? It'd be really interesting to see what some of you have to share. Again, if you can't think of any questions now, that's absolutely fine. We will have a Q&A session at the end of the stream. I will hang around for 15 minutes or so, and I will happily answer any questions that you have, either about my university experience or the experience that any of you have had so far in the application process, or thinking about the application process if you're in, let's say, year 10 or 11. So, the next question that I think I want to sort of ask is, well, how do you know which university to choose? I want all of you who have tuned in this evening to type some answers. do any of you know which universities you would like to go to? Do any of you have any universities in mind? It'd be really, really interesting to see what some of you have in mind in terms of university choices. And just sort of throw something else in there as well. Also pop in the chat if you have any courses in mind. That would be really interesting to see as well. So have any of you thought about which universities you might want to apply for? And if so, have you thought about what course you might want to apply for as well? So, the DIS expert, you're in year 10, but you want to go to Oxford. All right, fab, brilliant choice. Brilliant choice of university. Do you have any idea what course you might want to do? So Olivia, you said that you finished your degree last year, but you're considering applying for a master's. You went to you went to Queen Mary's. Fantastic, brilliant university. That was actually one of my choices when it came to applying for uni initially. Um, Interestingly enough, the university that I ended up going to was not one of my options at all. But I will talk a little bit about that towards the end of the live stream. So Akil, you said that you needed Manchester or unis in London like Imperial or UCL. Fantastic, all brilliant universities. Do so, Olivia or Akil, do either of you have any ideas as to what you do your degrees in? So Olivia, any idea what you do your masters in? And Akil, any ideas as to what you might do your degree in either Manchester, London, whether that's Imperial or UCL? It'd be really interesting to see um, whether you have any thoughts on that so far. Now, for me, when it came to knowing which university to apply for, I actually picked universities that weren't too close to home. And the only reason I thought that was because I wanted to try and experience living by myself. So it gave me the opportunity to learn how to iron, learn how to cook, and really manage myself. And I actually found it quite rewarding. So that was one of my reasons as to why I picked specific universities. Akil, you said computer science or mechanical engineering. Brilliant. Fantastic degrees. I think computer science was definitely something I saw a lot of students applying for at my sixth form. There was definitely a good proportion of students that applied for that. So that's brilliant. Good to see that you already have a bit of an idea. So Olivia, you said that you're quite torn. You could do a master's in education to help with your career, or you could do a master's in nuclear engineering, which is your passion. And obviously, student finance only lets you pick one. I think that's really, really cool, actually. What I would say, to be honest, is if you're thinking of doing a master's, it will be a commitment regardless. I would say if you're at a stage where you think, okay, well, any further learning I want to help progress my career, then I would say maybe go with education. However, if you feel like the master's in education isn't quite something you find too interesting, then it could very well be that you do a master's in nuclear engineering. I'm sure with regards to education, there are many other things you could possibly do in terms of furthering your career. I'm sure there are other options apart from the masters. So hopefully you don't feel as though it's either one or the other, and that if you do one, it's not going to be as fun as something you're quite passionate about. It's interesting that you actually say that because I'm looking at doing postgraduate research myself. I'm looking at doing a PhD. And since I work full time as a hospital pharmacist, it's quite challenging because a lot of PhDs are lab based. And so I've been lucky to find a supervisor who's really supportive, that is willing to work around my work commitments. And I suppose my reason is because I want to lecture part time, hopefully, be a bit in academia, be a bit in hospital. So I would say find something that you're passionate about because anything in university is completely self-directed. I hope that advice is helpful. But if you do want to further chat about it, definitely towards the end of the session, I will be around to talk a little bit more. So on the slide, I've taken a few quotes from a few students that were interviewed by my tutor. So Jamila, who was a biomedical science student at King's College London, said that she picked King's College London because it gave her access to a lot of experts doing cutting-edge research. My quote was that I wanted to study away from home because I wanted to use my university experience to improve my sense of independence. And it also meant I could impress mum and dad during the holidays with my fairly basic cooking. I'm nowhere near Gordon Ramsay yet, but or I wasn't at the time. Debatable whether I am now. I'm glad you found it useful, Olivia. No worries at all. So, the next thing I want to talk a little bit about is how do you know which course to choose? Now, a lot of you have already shared some ideas that you have about doing courses. So this is a bit of an excerpt from Matthew, who was a medical student at the University of Liverpool, again interviewed by my tutor. Now, interestingly, I won't read it out word for word, but just reading his excerpt, you can see that initially he wants to sort of study law because he liked the idea of solving complex problems. But then he realised that he quite enjoyed the sciences, and he didn't quite want a pure science course, and so it was only in volunteering in a care home that he then realised that the medical field was for him. He also did some volunteering as a healthcare assistant in the local hospital, and medicine was perfect because it was a nice meld between the sciences and humanities. Now, he also mentions that feels like a bit of a cliche, but there's nothing wrong with that if that is genuinely how you feel. Sometimes what's really easy to, or I guess the most appropriate way to decide on what course to pursue is thinking a bit about what it is that you like to do. Sometimes it can be quite challenging to say for definite, this is what I want to do. So it can be quite challenging to say, I want to do medicine, I want to do law, I want to do engineering. Sometimes it can be a case of saying, okay, well, I quite like problem solving, or I quite like working with people. And then you can then look at careers that involve those skills, and then you can then possibly from those then decide, okay, well, maybe I'll do this at university. That's a bit of advice that I could offer all of you who are watching this live or who are watching this retrospectively. Now, this is also from Fiona, who was a French and Russian student at St. Andrews. Now, if you quite like linguistics, Fiona advises that you choose to study a language that you feel really, really passionately about, because a language can be a lot of hard work and effort. Additionally, she also advised to watch shows on Netflix in that language, read books in that language, and then you'll see improvement whilst having fun. So if any of you are interested in linguistics, then definitely I would sort of recommend taking on Fiona's advice. Another point there. So I suppose then, the question then is, well, what do you do if you still don't know what course to choose? Oh, Akil has said pas de problème, no problem in French. Brilliant, great to see we've got a linguist in the chat. I actually dropped French at AS level. I did all three sciences in French, and I found that between French and physics, I wanted to carry on physics a bit more. So it would be nice to get back into French. I suppose that's what Duolingo is for. But definitely, if you're thinking about doing a language at university, do make sure that you immerse yourself in the language and in the culture as much as possible. So, the question then is, well, what do you do if you still don't know what course to actually choose? And there are many things you can do. Again, no one expects you to have it all figured out. Also remember that even after you've applied for university, people change their minds. That's also okay. So, what do you think you would do if you still didn't know what course to choose? What are some ideas? What could the solution be? What do all of you think? What are some ideas that we have in the chat as to what we would do if you still don't know what course to choose? What are some ideas that people have about what you might do if you're not too sure as to what you might want to do? There are plenty of options, actually. I can think of a few, but it'll be really, really interesting to see what some of you have in terms of ideas. So just let's see. So the DIS expert has said previous A levels. So yeah, so you could possibly look at your previous A levels, and then based on that, you could then say, okay, well, I'll do a degree in one of my A levels. So if you found that you quite liked biology or chemistry, you could continue biology or chemistry at university, or even combine the two and do biochemistry. That's definitely a good option. What other ideas? Akil, you said that you would look into what you like to do in the future as an achievement, e.g. build a car. So yes, that's also good. You could think a little bit about what it is that you want to achieve, and then from there, possibly plan a route that might involve an undergraduate course. Fantastic. Olivia, you said that you would talk to current university students or attend open days and talk to teachers. Also fantastic. I think that's also a really brilliant idea. Um, Current university students will always give you a very realistic and very personal anecdote of what their university experience has been like so far, and they can give you, I suppose, a real life type of review on the course that they're doing, and that can actually really make a difference as to whether or not you pursue that course or not, or you think of alternatives. Open days are also very useful because you have lecturers or even teachers at the school that offers that course. They can give you a bit of an overview as to what the course is like, what things you'll get involved with. So that's definitely an option as well. Brilliant. You know, some of these suggestions are suggestions that I hadn't even thought of. So, as always, I really appreciate you guys interacting in the live chat. It's much appreciated. It means that I'm almost talking to you, not just talking at you. So, fantastic. Thanks so much for the engagement. So, research. There are loads and loads of YouTube videos out there that will talk a little bit about what university is like. Most of the YouTube videos are sort of titled A Day in the Life of, let's say, a medical student, or a law student, or an English literature student, just as a few examples. So you can watch some of those, and you can see what their experience has been like. But yes, alternatively, you could talk to current students. You could read articles, reach out to older siblings, teachers, or parents as well. You have many options in terms of finding certain individuals who can give you their experience on what university has been like. Interestingly enough, some universities actually have like a live chat where you can talk to a current student, and that live chat facility is for prospective students. So that's another alternative. Similar to what Akil said, find a career or industry that you find interesting or that you're passionate about, and you could work backwards. And similar to what the expert said earlier, you could list interests or things that you've already studied and then compare them to certain degrees, and sort of look at some of the skills that you might learn in that degree. You can sort of compare and contrast, and then from there, think a little bit about what might suit you best as an individual. These are all tips that you can use. And I suppose this sort of leads us to the last question. Well, what do you actually do if you still don't know which university to actually go to? Again, I suppose all the answers that you've given so far, which have been absolutely brilliant, all of them are relevant to this question as well. So, Akil, you mentioned that you might want to look at things you might want to do in the future. Well, let's say, for instance, building a car is something that you might want to do. So let's say engineering is your designated course. You might then say, okay, well, which universities are really big on engineering? Which universities have massive schools of engineering? Which universities put a lot of money and research into that field? That might be quite supportive. So that might be an option. And from there, you can then draft a list of universities. Olivia, you mentioned open days. So you could go to a variety of open days for different universities. And then based on the open day that you enjoyed the most, those could be the universities that you shortlist when it comes to applications. Now, does everyone know how many options you have when it comes to UCAS? When it comes to that initial application? Just pop the number in the live chat. I just want to see what everyone's understanding is. How many universities are you able to apply for when it comes to UCAS? So we have the DIS expert has said 4 in terms of the number of universities. Do we have any more numbers at all? Any others? You're close with 4. You're very close with 4. So Akil, you said 5. Oh, and the DIS expert has said 5 as well. Yes, perfect. So you are allowed to apply up to 5 universities per UCAS application. When it comes to applying for UCAS, and I'll talk a bit about this later on, you effectively have 5 options. You will then firm one, which is your first choice, and you have another one which is an insurance choice. So if you, let's say, don't meet the grades for your first choice, then you'll then have your second choice of university. But I believe for UCAS Extra, Olivia, you said 5, then 1, 5 on UCAS? Let me see. But yes, on UCAS Extra, there is another one. So I think UCAS Extra is similar to adjustment or clearing, but I think that's before results day, if I'm not mistaken. Because results day is after July. So UCAS Extra is something new, actually. I didn't actually have UCAS Extra when it came to applying. But it's another opportunity for you to gain a place at a university between February and July if you're not holding any offers. So yes, you have more opportunity to go to university. Akil, you've also pointed out that you can choose one between Oxbridge, so that's right. If you apply for Oxford, you can't apply to Cambridge, and vice versa. You apply for Cambridge, you can't apply to Oxford. 4 options if they are vocational degrees like medicine or dentistry. So that's correct. If you apply for, let's say, medicine, you have 4 choices, and then you would have one that is not. But then keep in mind, there's no rule that says it has to be 4 and 1. It can be 3 and 2, depending on what it is that how you'd like to apply. Fantastic. Thanks so much for getting involved so far, guys. It's been absolutely brilliant. So, in terms of some other tips when it comes to choosing a university, you could look at the syllabus, so look at the structure of the course. So, I went to Durham University through adjustment after results day, and originally I was going to study pharmacology at Edinburgh, but one of the reasons that I actually swapped was because I wanted something more vocational, but I still wanted something that was a nice hybrid between biology and chemistry, which is why I opted for pharmacy through adjustment instead of just pharmacology, and pharmacy included pharmacology regardless. So actually, one thing that I did was I looked at the syllabus and I saw that Durham referred to the program as integrated, which I found quite interesting. It also offered me the opportunity to study with student doctors and student nurses, which I thought was absolutely brilliant in terms of healthcare training. You could also opt for certain Universities, if they have year abroad schemes or year in industry options, which can also be quite enticing. You can also look at whether or not they're flexible when it comes to you changing courses. You also look at whether the lifestyle suits you. So is the university in a city? Is it in a countryside? Is it a bit of a mix? And also just keep in mind, you can also factor in cost of living. So it could very well be that if you decide to pick a London university, you might not live in central London. You might live in maybe Greater London because it might be slightly cheaper to live. It could very well be that if you go up towards the north of England, you might find that rent is slightly cheaper there. My tutor actually has a really, really good guide which actually lists what the average costs are depending on where you are in the UK. What I will do is I will comment the link to that PDF after the session. I'll put it in the YouTube videos comment section just for all of you to sort of check out later on. But the cost of living is more than enough reason to help guide you in your decision making when it comes to choosing universities. I don't necessarily think it should be the driving factor, but it can be a factor for all of you to consider. But I think what's important is that you try and avoid reasons like where your friends are going. Naturally, it's great to go to similar institutions that your friends have gone to, but one, keep in mind that you will make new friends at university, and that doesn't mean that you forget about your old friends, because you can always FaceTime them, you can always, even Facebook Messenger also has a calling system where you can have group calls, and you can always visit them when it's out of term time. So never feel as though you have to go to the same institution that your friends are going to. Make sure that you opt for institutions that you feel support you in your future endeavours. Additionally, don't just apply for places that you've already heard of before. It could very well be that the perfect university for you is one that you've never even heard of, and it could very well be that that specific institution really specialises in what you're interested in. So don't be afraid to get online and really do some research, or to talk to people about their university experience as well. Additionally, don't just apply to places that your parents think you should go to. Now, I'm not for a second suggesting that you shouldn't listen to their advice. By all means, if they have advice, then take it on board. But do remember that this is your university experience. I know some students may feel a bit of pressure to apply for specific courses or apply to specific institutions because it will make their parents proud. And again, by all means, there's nothing wrong with that. But that shouldn't come at the expense of you enjoying your own university experience. Just keep in mind that ultimately it'll be you going to university, and the last thing you want is to dedicate time for 3 or 4 years and not enjoy the course or not enjoy the university that you're going to. So if your parents have advice, do take it on board, but ultimately the decision is yours. University is an absolutely fantastic time, and you're only really an undergraduate once. So on those notes, I will sort of say, take everything on board to help you make a decision. Now, for all of you who are either thinking of applying, just keep in mind that for 2023 entry, for all UCAS undergrad courses, apart from those with a 15th of October deadline, that generally refers to medicine or Oxbridge, your deadline is the 25th of January 2023. Now, that seems quite a way away, but keep in mind that it's almost the end of November. December rolls around and it's Christmas time, and before you even realise it, it's the end of January. So when it comes to your applications, make sure you're really on the ball with getting everything done. Now, in the next session, we're going to talk a little bit about what the prerequisites are, so getting a reference, your personal statement, but make sure you work on your application gradually. Make sure you research gradually so that everything isn't rushed towards the end. That's something else that I will also say. And that's everything from me so far. Now, just like I mentioned before, this is part 1 out of 2, um, based on the UCAS application process and the university experience. Um, do make sure that you tune in for part 2 next week at the same time. It's going to be focused on writing personal statements and UCAS deadlines. Interestingly, I've been writing my own personal statement recently, when it comes to applying for my postgraduate research, so I can give a few first-hand tips when it comes to writing one out. But I will hang around for, let's say, a bit more than 5-10 minutes actually. It's not been the full hour yet. So if anyone does have any questions at all, then by all means, I'm more than happy to answer them. Before any of you leave the live chat this evening, or the live stream, I should say, a few things. Number one, I believe there is a survey that you should complete, which gives us all the opportunity to get a bit of feedback as to how you found the live stream this evening. At My Tutor, we are really, really keen on improving the live stream experience for all of you. So if there are any things that we can do in particular to improve them, make them more engaging, or absolutely anything to make your experience of them better, then do make sure you fill out the survey. In filling out that survey, you also have the opportunity to win a £50 voucher, which isn't too bad at all. So that's even more reason to fill in that survey. Additionally, there are other study squads. There's a math squad and a coding squad earlier on in the week. There is a squad for maths that Olivia does on a Monday at 5 p.m. There is a coding squad that Fliss does on a Tuesday at 5 p.m. So do make sure that you check that out as well. And as usual, there is a study squad, as in mine, 5 p.m. on a Thursday. Next week, we're going to be focused on writing personal statements. We're going to look at UCAS deadlines, and we'll also, like we will do shortly, have a bit of a Q&A as to what sort of things to look for when it comes to university. And it's also an opportunity for all of you to ask me questions about what my university experience was like, what applying was like, and what I'm doing now, and what there is beyond school and beyond university. So I will be hanging around for a bit longer, which definitely gives you all more than enough opportunity to ask me any questions. So yes, as I mentioned before, the chance for a £20 voucher. So do make sure that you click on the link that Samuel has popped in the live chat. Thank you for doing that, Samuel. Do make sure that you fill out that survey. I can also see that My Tutor has thankfully put a little reminder email in there. So if you do want a reminder about my mentoring sessions every Thursday at 5 p.m, then by all means just click on that link, and you will get a nice little email that just sort of gives you a reminder to say 5 p.m. Professor NK is going to be sharing some words of wisdom, all about university or just about studying as a whole. But next week we'll still be focused on UCAS and the university application process. But I hope all of you found today's session useful. I'm going to swap back to the normal screen since the PowerPoint is finished for this evening, and I will hang around for a bit longer for all of you to ask me questions about the university application process, about what university was like for me, or absolutely anything university related, because I know a lot of you are applying for university round about now. I know it can be a bit of a daunting process, so hopefully some of the advice that I've offered this evening will make that process as smooth as possible. But thank you all for joining this evening. I will be here for a little bit longer, so by all means do feel free to put your comments or questions in the chat box. I think one of the things that I quite enjoyed about university, I suppose I've talked about the independence aspect of it already, but I definitely found university exciting because I almost had the opportunity to sort of learn at my own pace. I also sort of structure my own learning. I also had the opportunity to sort of find other things to do beyond my course. So university really is a fantastic experience. But like I mentioned before, there are other routes apart from university. So there are apprenticeships. You can go straight into the workplace. You can even take a gap year if you want to, if you're not too sure about university. So by all means, don't ever feel pressured to just go in one direction. There are multiple that you can pick from. But yes, if anyone does have any questions, then by all means do pop them in the live chat. Will I teach science? Let me see. So I do teach biology and chemistry. Now, if you mean in terms of the study squad sessions, I've not actually done a study squad session teaching biology or chemistry. It could very well be that's something that we take into account for the next round of study squads. I think that would be really, really cool, actually. I think there are plans in the works for other study squads. So if there is demand for biology ones or chemistry ones, whether they're GCSE or A level, then yeah, that's certainly something that we can, we can certainly sort of put into action and create at my tutor. I think what we'll need to do is we'll sort of need to look at how many people would like those sessions, and then from there put something together. I do personally teach biology and chemistry GCSE and A level on my tutor. You can find my profile just by you should be able to sort of search my profile and find me on my tutor. But in terms of these live stream sessions, we can certainly take that into account, and if there is demand for biology and chemistry, we can definitely put something together for the future. Does anyone have any? What was I going to say actually? That's what it was. I was going to say, does anyone else have any questions at all? Either about university, about applying. Did everyone find the session helpful this evening? Do put a thumbs up in the chat. For those of you who are still here, do make sure you put a thumbs up in the chat if you found it useful. Whether that's a bit of insight into different avenues apart from uni applications, or maybe debunking some of those myths we went over earlier. But yes, any other feedback, do make sure you pop in the survey that Samuel has put in the chat earlier. I think I'll give it 3 more minutes or so, and after that we will wind down for this evening, and we'll get ready for the next session next week, Thursday at 5 p.m. You know, it's always quite interesting. I always find that this song always tends to play anytime I stream. It is a playlist, one that won't get a sound on this video struck down on YouTube. It's royalty free. I do always find it interesting that at some point when I'm streaming, this song plays at least once. But yes. It looks like a few people are heading off, so I think we will call it a night there. Once again, I would like to thank all of you who joined this evening for joining, really. And thank all of you for getting involved and being as active as possible in the live chat. Hopefully I'll see more of you next week, Thursday at 5 p.m. Hopefully you filled in that survey before you left. But otherwise, I've been your host, NK, or Nketia. And this session has been all about UCAS and the admissions process when it comes to university. We will be recapping this very, very briefly at the beginning of next week's session. So if you are watching this retrospectively, don't worry. We will cover some of that content next Thursday as well. But until then, I hope you will have an absolutely wonderful evening. Stay safe, stay productive, and keep being the best student that you can be. And with that, it's good night from me. Have a lovely evening, everyone. Take care.